Welcome to Honey the Photographers here. It's great to have you, and it's been a long time coming because I've wanted you, particularly on the podcast, because we've obviously been working together the longest, George. So tell us about how that all sort of started.
Yeah, certainly, Pat. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us. Awesome studio
Thank you.
down here in Queanbeyan, capital region. We kicked off, I was only saying to someone today, actually, I've been in real estate for 9 years, which is scary because that sounds very close to 10 years. But about, I'd say, would it be 7 years ago?
Yeah.
7
Before
years
COVID,
ago.
it was 18, 19?
Yeah, it would be
Yeah.
18, 19. And the photography of the properties is actually my favourite part of the job. I was renowned for packing a camera, a pair of hiking boots, and a frying pan, and heading out to properties early in the morning, waiting for the sunrise, doing photo shoots and cooking myself breakfast often with Dad in tow, and going and photographing properties. Absolutely loved it. Very time-consuming part of that process
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, we reached out to you. We had the pleasure of going to school together, which was great, and that's how the journey started. It's been exciting.
And it's been awesome. You know, I remember starting on weekends and just going and doing it. It was something that at the time know a lot about doing it. Make sure we had the right gear, and we started with our big wide-angle fisheye lens, which was
Yep.
a terrible mistake. Now looking back on it, but it's been really good fun. So let's talk a bit about, because I feel that we have dialed in a process over the many years that we've been working together that is far different and, dare I say, superior to what a lot of other agents are doing, because it's not just about capturing the property in as fewer shots as possible. There's a bit of a trick to it. So we're going to talk a bit about that, George.
Yeah, certainly. And I think ultimately what we need to recognise in real estate is that the first impression for a potential buyer, who we know is going through a lot of emotional, financial, and sometimes physically with our properties, they're putting a lot of effort on those three fronts into the purchase. The first impression that they get is the visuals of the property. What we learn when we go to marketing schools is that the visual captures the eye first, that's followed by the heading, and then we have the opportunity to profess the benefits of the property. What we try and do, and it's something that we've probably organically, I suppose, we probably couldn't say that we ever sat down and said, righto, this is our strategy.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's trial and error, a lot of what we've come up with.
Yeah, and that's been certainly part of the experience with yourself, and something that I've loved about dealing with you and Claire is that it is a little bit experimental. I think, we saw that awesome photo this week of the surfer in Tahiti with the Olympic Games. That's not, you don't sit down and go, I'd like to get this shot one day. Some of that comes with flukes. Obviously, we have some really creative moments when we have drones run into trees, and we've got to improvise with motorbikes and doing a Tour de France style media presentation. But ultimately, it's about doing things a bit differently to allow the property to stand out. It is a very crowded market, the real estate market.
100%.
When it comes to visuals.
Yeah.
We're not doing anything amazingly unique, like we're selling properties.
Yeah.
And so the visuals help us stand out, and I think the more risky or the more open to risks that we are with getting those images, the better they turn out.
Yeah, 100%. And because you do a lot of rural, but you've also delved into the residential stuff just because of the way you're located, what makes a rural property different in the way that it's presented than a residential sort of listing, and why do we spend the extra effort that we do on a rural listing?
It's a very valid point. The reality of the situation is that you do not need to come and own a rural property to live in the regions and enjoy the benefits of the regions. You can live in one of the towns surrounding the capital quite comfortably in a residential setting, and that's that. What we're asking people to do is commit to weekend work on their property, their farm, We're asking them to commit to, a bit of a longer drive to the bus stop and all those sorts of things.
So it's a lifestyle change, really.
It's a lifestyle change, and that's what we have to present in our photos, is the lifestyle part of it.
Yeah.
And not to give all the secrets away to the podcast listeners or viewers or whatever you do with podcasts, but the reality is the trick is bringing it to life. And I actually had a conversation with a client today. Property was previously on the market with another agent. We've taken over the marketing of it. You've come out and photographed that property, and just simply doing the things that we do that come naturally by involving humans and animals and, the fun aspects of the property into the photography. We've literally reached 1,000 viewers on all homes within 2 weeks, where previously it took them 4 weeks to get to that same level.
Yeah, just by simple fact of changing the way that it's marketed due to, like you said, all those lifestyle components of making that listing really sing. And people, it's all about, we talk about the hero shot, we talk about so many different other areas and aspects, and you've got to find some, and going back to what you said about really standing out in the market, how do you stand out in the market? And the best way to do that is through lifestyle and also caring, really having a passion and caring for what you do with each property that you sell. And that's what we put into every time we go there. Like, I genuinely get excited every single shoot that we're on with you guys, because they are exciting, and by putting your heart and soul into it gets the best outcome for our vendors at the end of the day. So
yeah, and look, ultimately they're the people we're working for. We have to create a picture, and with rural property, we have to create a compelling picture, which sometimes involves people taking a full day, travelling significant distances to come out and experience those properties.
Yep.
Once we get them on the ground, the job is almost done.
Yes, it's just getting them there and the right people there that are actually genuinely interested to make sure that they are making the right decision is the hardest part to get them to do.
Totally. And then, one of the other challenges we have, which we've overcome over the years, is when you're dealing with a significant commercial operation, a proper farm, you do need to demonstrate the capacity of that property to generate income.
Yes.
At the end of the day, yes, it's a lifestyle and it's a great way of living, and it's been an awesome way for, the likes of you and I to grow up in those environments. Ultimately, it's a commercial decision, though.
Yes. Is it a viable option?
Correct.
And all, yeah, 100%.
So then, we've got to bring in skills that you've got and certainly developed over the years of, photographing cattle and sheep, photographing crops to show the capacity of the asset to produce an income. Yeah,
100%. And just diving in just a little bit more, making you guys, the Ray White brand, I think, a little bit more unique. You guys have a one-step sort of further process where you actually tap in more to the market and the marketing options that are out there, like the All Homes, the different magazines, and all that sort of stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit, really high level, about some of that process that I think the Ray White offers that I think a lot of other agents haven't necessarily considered yet?
Yeah, certainly. Look, we're a company that's been going for just over 120 years now. The Ray White rural arm of Ray White is 30 years old this year. Simon, my old man, he started with the company literally when it started 30 years ago, Ray White Rural. And what we've learnt over the years is that we need to spread the net as wide as we can to catch as many fish. And that involves a broad approach, but also a targeted approach. And then we ultimately track those numbers and we ask the questions of the inquiries to find out where they've seen the property advertised. And then we also use cold hard data of the correlation between press and digital marketing to make sure that every aspect of the campaign is still working.
Yep, and covered correctly. And if one area is working better than others, you obviously divert your attention to that area more than the other part of it as well.
Yeah, and ultimately, marketing's a science.
Yes.
It used to be 12 touch points. It's now 22.
Yeah.
We have to have the consumer touched by our product, which so happens to be possibly the biggest purchase they're going to make in their life. And we have to make sure that they're engaged with that at least 22 times before they will act on it.
Yeah.
So, to rattle off a few, we have radio, which is a new medium for property advertising. We've got the YouTube videos, we've got the social media websites, we've got the traditional marketing in newspapers and flyers and signboards, and then we move into the targeted ad space as well, which I know you do a lot of work with. And that's very important because it is a crowded market out there.
Yeah, 100%. And do you find, and it probably because I think primarily your audience, but do you find the printed stuff is just as effective these days still as the digital, or do you think it's on the way out, or is it still important?
The correlation between the inquiries that we have digitally is in direct
alignment.
It is, direct alignment with press advertising.
Wow. So there you go. They're still, you heard here first, folks, that it is still 100% relative. And if you're willing to spend the money, you're going to get the results out of it, of course. So, no, that's awesome, bud. Yeah. Well, let's shift gear a little bit. Let's talk about your journey through real estate. Yeah, like you said, it was 9 years now you've been a real estate agent, but you're still, I would say, compared to me, you're still a pretty young guy. So
you're not too much older than me, Pat.
So where did you start in real estate, and why did you want to go down the real estate career path?
Yeah, certainly. Look, I kicked off my apprenticeship when I was about 5 years old, school holidays, sitting in the backseat of a Patorama driving around Western Queensland with Dad. That was it. The main thing that probably drew me to it was the fact that it is a different day every day, and I know that's something that you love.
Yeah.
And we, often compare calendars, and sometimes it's incredible the places that we end up.
Yeah.
In
and the distance and the time that it takes to get there.
A mate of mine the other day, I won't mention his name, but he said he was a bit tired from driving to Maruya and back for the day. And anyway, so that was good fun to deal with. But the love of real estate is from that variety. It's also an extremely rewarding industry, depending on the amount of effort that you put in.
Yeah.
And then that's really matured into a space where, for me now, it's not so much chasing a certain type of product or anything like that. I love selling across the board, from $200,000 units and townhouses, right through to $20 million rural properties. That variety excites me. But the main thing is, and I didn't really recognise this early on in my career, but we can have a direct impact on someone's trajectory of life.
Oh yeah.
And help them significantly. And some of the, I could sit here all afternoon and tell stories about how that's affected people. Sometimes that involves more money. Sometimes that involves awesome terms. Sometimes it's as simple as ringing up a financial institution and asking them to take a break because we've got a process in place. So ultimately being able to help people now is where I really get my drive in the industry, and that extends to helping people start their careers and grow their careers in real estate. And that, I just love that. I love seeing people succeed in this industry. Something that I'm very passionate about it. I love all the stereotypes.
Yeah.
Used car salespeople, real estate agents. I love it. It's great.
And it's really interesting. It's something that I still, to this day, when I talk to agents, I still struggle to wrap my head around that there is sometimes this stereotype that still happens with real estate agents. But to be honest, in my years of working in this industry, I've never met a car salesman or a sleazy real estate agent ever. Everyone I talk to are genuine people, just like yourself, who in some small way are creating a mark on, people's lives to help, like you said, make the biggest financial decision of their life, or help them get out of something or debt or whatever it may be. And it is quite rewarding, and you get it because you deal with more of it, but we also deal with it as well in the actual being part of the process. Just being part of the process is a really rewarding and valued part of being in this industry. That's awesome. And
I think too, Pat, it's something that we tend to take for granted, and I dare say it's probably something you take for granted too. But we get invited into people's inner sanctum.
Yes. Yep.
I don't know too many people in a professional industry, accountants, bookkeepers, lawyers, like you don't get invited into people's walk-in bedroom.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's quite, people show us a lot of vulnerability
Yeah.
in that space, and that's something I don't take for granted anymore.
Yeah.
I really, really appreciate those opportunities.
And is real estate where you ultimately want to stay or want to go, or is there still a dream to do something else, perhaps?
Look, there's certainly a dream there to help as many people as I can in my time here.
Yep.
And real estate's certainly fulfilling that at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers of people that we're helping as a business now is increasing tenfold year on year, and that's very, very exciting. But ultimately, one day I'd, like to change careers and move into something that, will allow me to help a few more people out there.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, awesome. Shifting gears a little bit as well, your dad tells me these great stories of him hanging out in his early career out of planes and helicopters and all sorts of things to capture properties, big rural spaces. But obviously we've got drones these days. Talk to me about how, obviously, I do it, but how do you incorporate the drones into the listings that we come up with?
Yeah, I'll never forget our first drone shoot. It was just this amazing technology that was sort of hitting the scene. The hiring of the Cessna and literally getting sat in the back of a Cessna. Remember those big tubs of black and gold ice cream?
Yes.
I think they were 5 litres.
Yeah.
And the pilot up there at St George leant back, Peter Jones, and he said, "Oh, there's a bucket for you, George." And I said, "Oh, what do I need that for, Mr. Jones?" And he said, "Oh, you might need it when we take off in this little red Cessna." It was an absolute pile of shit. And we almost clipped the roof fence on the way up to go and photograph the place. The main thing with drone photography is it's made it a lot safer.
Yes.
And it's become very accessible. The beauty of it, though, really, in my opinion, is that you're getting those in-between shots. So, we've done the climbing on top of cars and all that sort of stuff to get that magic sort of 15, 20-foot high shot. We've done the climbing on roofs of buildings to get things happening. I remember back to the Darramarlin days. I mean, we used to have to hire a telehandler to take the Sacred Heart Day school photo. Then they built a building, so it was taken off the side of the building. Well, now we're using a drone. So I think that sort of shows the evolution of the technology.
Yeah.
But it's that in-between shot. It's that awkward height that we can't fly aircraft at.
Yes.
And also the tight spaces that we tend to be able to get them. Obviously, we've got a bit more freedom in the rural areas with what we can do with a drone compared to the residential spaces.
Yep.
But ultimately, it's about probably showing a little bit more of the property in a different light.
Yes, definitely. And I 100% agree with you. I think what we've managed to achieve over the years with drone is definitely, it's about that fine tweaking. So with drones, you can't go higher than 120 meters, but that's where planes can't go any lower than 120 meters, right? So you can create some really magical angles as opposed to that. But what drones also allow us to do is get access to take a photo at any time, at any space, three-dimensionally, that ultimately we couldn't have access to before. And as a result, we've created some absolutely magical moments of that, from having actors on top of mountainsides and spinning around, to flying deep through trees, to chasing kangaroos in the moment. And again, like, you couldn't get that with a plane or travel with a car because you'd scare off the wildlife by the time you've done that. And you can get some truly spectacular both ground and other shots as a result.
One thing I like to note too, the technology of the drones has changed a lot, and you've always been at the forefront of that technology.
Yeah, when we started 10 years ago, they were these big bulky things, and it was a whole backpack just to have this whole drone. And the flight time was so limited, right?
Like GoPros hanging off the back of them.
Yeah, it's like we could only be in the air for 10, 15 minutes at a time on a battery. But now we're doing shoots where we're in the air 40 minutes plus, traveling the entire property, drone still in the air, and capturing moments as they happen rather than having to worry too much about setting the scene anymore. So yeah, I think and not to mention the cameras have gotten better quality, they've gotten smaller, they've gotten way safer. So like George has mentioned, we early days of shooting with, I think I've lost maybe 3 or 4 drones with you, George.
I think there's a few more. We'll have to check with Claire for the numbers, but yeah, Claire, your wife, doesn't really like to talk about new technology.
No,
does she?
it costs her a lot of money every
Yeah.
single time, but it ultimately makes for really good content
For the viewers, Pat doesn't have a washing machine or a dryer at home. He's got the latest drone though.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, poor old Claire's hand washing clothes, but the technology has changed, and it's interesting dealing with livestock.
Yes.
I was watching a video the other day where we thought we were so cool. We put a lapel mic on, and then there was a shot in a vineyard at Yass River, and you took off, and I was walking along in this shot, providing a sentence. And I said, Pat, how are we going to drown out the noise of this drone? And you said, oh, it'll be right, it'll be all good. And it came up really good. It's got to be one of the worst bits of drone sound footage I've ever heard now that I watch it again. But the technology's changed.
Yeah.
We can fly over the top of a horse now and they don't even know that we're there.
Yeah.
I think that's really
Yeah.
helpful. And to your credit, as much as we, bag out Claire for putting the handbrake on you all the time with new technology, it's very, very important to be at the forefront of that.
Yeah. It's what we pride ourselves. It's one of our values here at Patorama. We're always, looking into how we can improve what we do, but ultimately improve the quality and the how we produce what we produce for our clients. And we're now looking into AI technology. So, for example, that piece of audio that you're talking about that's pretty shit, but it was quiet in a sense of a word. These days we can run that through an AI audio enhancer and it drops out the drone sound in a click of a button, whereas we just didn't have access to that before. And it's really interesting seeing and taking from the cinema and Hollywood world a little bit. We're getting access to Hollywood level stuff or higher end stuff at a much lower cost, and that's what I've always tried with Patorama. Yes, a shoot will cost you money, but it'll cost you far less than hiring a whole crew of people to do shots that are physically impossible and nor people would have access to ordinarily or want to spend the money on because we have the right technology now rather than spending a time on a whole crew.
I think the reality of that point is very, very important. And I'm not just here, talking today, pumping your tyres up, but it's one thing to have the technology, it's also the ability to know how to use it.
Yeah.
And I find there are a lot of agents out there that are still running around taking photos of rural property themselves. And that's fine, and I love getting behind a camera, every now and then on a shoot with you to get a few photos and, you make me feel like I've still got it. But the reality of the situation is it's not about having the technology, because the technology is affordable now, but it's also about knowing how to use it.
Yep.
And a great example of that is, as I tell the story of literally cooking breakfast at 5 o'clock in the morning, waiting for that golden hour of photography. It took me a while to realise that we actually don't need to do that anymore. We can photograph property at any time of the day.
But also, twilight shots sometimes on rural property may not be the best time of day.
Yeah.
And there's various reasons for that. Number one being the shadows, or just if it's a harsh sunny day, you're going to get really harsh shadows that aren't going to show that it'll make the property look not great at all, right? We're not being able to see cows and cattle because of the different time of day, whereas mid-morning or an overcast day is a far better time to do that. So, yeah, 100%.
Pat, I'll give you credit where credit's due with rural photography. One of the hardest things for rural photography is actually photographing black cattle. And
you wouldn't believe how many times Connor and Harrison have told me that you've said this to them, but please continue the story.
It's so hard photographing black cattle.
Yeah.
It's just the contrast, the colours, or whatever the technical terms are.
Yep.
But it's been a real pleasure of mine to see us grow in that space. I've always been a lover of Herefords. The main reason is they're easier to photograph than Angus.
Yeah.
But over the years we've had to really perfect that. And I think some of the images we've had, both still images, which are very, very important still, and also the video work. Some of the shoots we've done in the last 2 years have just been
jaw-dropping, I would say.
Magic.
Yeah.
And I suppose, again, it comes down to knowing how to use the technology, because when you're flying a drone above a mob of sheep, the drone is an object that needs to be used to your advantage. It's not invisible. They know that it's there, and you can either use that and it looks really awful because they're running away from that item, or you can create a scenario like we have where you've got a human or a dog working the sheep, and then you're using the drone to capture that, but also using it as a bit of a deterrent. And that comes down to skill.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we've done that so many times where we start chasing the stock to move them around, and then realizing that the shot is wrong, and you don't want to showcase scared, timid animals. So being able to quickly use that assessment, turn to a space that actually makes it look natural, and then either pulling back or doing something. It's quite incredible too.
And it's not just, again, not to pump your tyres up, but it's not just Pat that does this. I think that's worth noting.
Yeah.
You've trained some magnificent photographers like the ones that you've got at the moment,
Yeah.
who understand that, and they've picked that up very quickly.
Yep.
Probably because of our trial and error over the years for both of us, but it's a skill in that rural photography space which does have to be mastered.
Yeah, 100%.
To be able to show that production capacity and the ability for that asset to make money.
And that, George, is ultimately why we love working with you guys, because we've got to the stage where we've got your back and always going to make sure we got good content, but B, we're in a really good place where we can help use that as a platform to train my next generation of photographers and get them up to scratch pretty quickly. And because we've got our process dialed in absolutely perfectly, we can fit that into shoots and still get an awesome result at the end of that. And I really do applaud and thank you for allowing us to do that. And it's all comes down to collaboration at the end of the day, right? Like you've got ideas, I've got ideas, and if we work together and because we continually work and trust each other on each shoot we do, we know that we're going to create some awesome results and created some absolute bangers over the years.
Yeah, certainly. And like, it's our pleasure. I've got a real passion for helping people into industry. Not to get too wound up, but small businesses where it's at. This is us. This is the largest portion of Australian businesses are small businesses. So if we can help people get into a small business, then it's just such a benefit.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's awesome to see people grow. I mean, we're sort of both at a similar point in our career now where watching people grow is a real pleasure.
Yeah.
And helping them. My sort of motto with people is I want to help you make mistakes.
Yes.
And I just love that.
And fail forward to fail in a way that makes sure you're not making the same mistake again and again, that you can learn from your mistake each time, which I think this is a good segue to my next sort of question, which is, what are some of the challenges along the way, just in every general run, running a business or a small business, that you've come across that, you wish you, I don't know, just anything that you've got that is interesting?
Look, there's a lot of challenges, and if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. We live in a fantastic part of the world. If you don't want to do what we're doing, you can go and get a very secure government job somewhere, grow your career, and have progression. Some of us are mad enough to choose to go and do our own thing and get into it. I suppose one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is the mentorship that can come from other people within the industry, but also different industries. And those mentors don't really stand out at the start of your career. And it's certainly something that you have to work on with consistency. But ultimately, I find a great pleasure in engaging with people that are further along the journey than me, which then allows me to stretch my brain.
But not necessarily too much further, like in the trillions of miles of steps ahead of you, only maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead of you. And that's what I've sort of found is people that have been literally just only a year or two ago through some of the pains and struggles that you're going through right now, and just having someone that you can just go back on and talk to and go, hey, where am I going wrong today? And not only that, but also then they help boost morale and, because some days you know, small business, you go, is it all worth it? Like, am I doing something that's actually achievable here? So
Totally.
yeah.
And, I often talk to my business coach, Don Farndon, about it. And we discuss what growth looks like. And it's a challenging thing to look at because there's so many different aspects of life that we have to grow in. And business is not our whole identity. It's a part of who we are.
Yeah.
And having the ability to engage with as many people as we do with that only little part of who we are as humans is pretty cool. But it's the growing, it's that stretching of the brain, something I talk to him quite a lot about. Stretching of the brain is not something that is comfortable, but it's something that's necessary to grow.
Yeah, 100%.
And it disturbs me too when people use the phrase or the term overnight success. It's quite a humbling thing when someone says, "Oh, you've got a lot of success. This year this is awesome."
Yeah.
And quite often that's misinterpreted because it's a lot of time in the wilderness to get to that point.
Correct. And a lot of what you don't see, which is the late nights and the staying back and the just grinding and the hustle to make sure that you are on top in the future. So yeah, 100%.
But the mentors, not to go over it too much, but the mentors are so important. Being able to pick that phone up and be challenged or challenge an idea with a sounding board. And I've got some very, very close mentors now in the industry and also outside of the industry that I bounce a lot of ideas off. And it's a very, very liberating resource to be able to do that. And I know that you and I do that quite
occasionally,
a lot.
yeah.
And it's very refreshing to be able to have those conversations.
Do you have any resources or podcasts that you sort of go back to on the weekly that you listen to that, it helps with this sort of stuff?
Yeah, totally. So I'm a massive fan. One of those mentors who's turned into a very good friend of mine, Shannon, he recommended a podcast many years ago now, the Dr. DeMartini podcast. I love listening to that. That's brilliant content. Really sort of challenges you as to how you think and how you act and how you behave, which is awesome. So I'd certainly encourage that. And then from a real estate point of view, there's lots of podcasts out there. I mean, I always joke that if you fail in real estate, you start a podcast. But the one that I really like to listen to is Alexander Phillips and Josh Fegan. They've got a great short podcast, comes out on a Monday morning, and it covers the reality of the industry, which is exciting.
Yeah, awesome. And to finally wrap it up...
Oh, and your podcast, of course.
Yeah, thank you.
Everyone has to watch it. I mean, it's the number one. So,
to wrap it up, so generally looking at the next 12 months with the real estate industry, rural and residential, where are we sitting? Like, what's the go? Have we got good, strong market, or is it like, where are we at with these interest rates? That are they on hold, or are they going up again? What's the go?
It's a very good point, Pat, that our job, both as a photographer and as a real estate agent, is not to control or make excuses for the market.
Yep.
Our job is to help people when they need.
At any time.
Whatever the market is, and be able to adapt to that as quickly as we can.
Yeah.
Because if we adapt slowly to changes in the market, then that can affect people by 2 or 3%. You take 2 or 3%, spread that across, $1 million, $2 million, $10 million listing, it can be quite a lot of cold, hard money at the end of the day that can affect their result. Generally speaking, I'm not afraid to say it, I do like to do a bit of travel here and there. I'm very fortunate to be able to do that and also do that within the industry, especially part of the Ray White Group. And we're just so lucky, not only in Australia but in this area, as to how stable our market is. We've got extremely, extremely safe and stable politics in Australia, and I think we do take that for granted. We certainly pay our taxes and our dues for the freedom that we have, but ultimately we do live in a very, very safe market, especially for real estate.
Yep.
And we see that constantly backed by federal, local and state levels of government. The next 12 months is going to be interesting. We're moving into an election cycle federally. Obviously, we've got a local government election or territory election in the ACT. That always affects our market here. You know, we often comment on the number of jobs that come through in and around that time.
Yep.
But ultimately, we just want to help as many people as we can in our part of the world.
Yep.
With their assets, and make sure that we can guide them through whatever market we're presented with.
Yep.
But on that point, I'd encourage people to talk about the market with someone who is in the market, rather than relying on the published media.
All the guesswork that happens that you
Correct.
do. Yeah, a lot of people do that. Claire's mother is unfortunately one of those. She likes to predict her own market and go, how is it? Oh, it's looking pretty good this week. Well, you know, let's go talk to an expert and actually see exactly what it is. And I agree. I'd highly encourage, even if you're not in the business of thinking of selling or buying yet, at least having a starting conversation. And honestly, agents love to just talk as it is. So they'll talk for free, and, you know, you can just pick their brains on where you think the market's at and what you should do next. I think is a really important thing.
Yeah, totally. And look, moving into that advisory space, I think is important for the agency industry, for real estate agents. For too long, we've been there at the end of the process. You know, we've got to a point, we've reached the decision, we want to sell. What can you do to help us? I think it's very humbling to be invited in a little bit earlier when the conversations are happening at a family level, before they go and deal with the accountants or the mortgage brokers or the bankers.
There's far more benefit to doing it that way anyway, because it means that you can, when you are ready, be set up for success right through the campaign, right through the entire sales process, for example, to make sure that you're doing it at the right time, maximizing your return on investment. What does the property need to actually get prepared? What am I going to spend my cash on? And you're not in the residential space, you're in the rural world, whereas in residential space, do I need to put a pool in? Do I need to paint the house? Whereas, like, do I need to clean up the yards? Do I put in something else? Do I, build another dam? Do I split the property in two? Like, all of this is really important advice that knowing a rural agent that knows what they're talking about to help you through that decision is hugely valuable.
Yeah, totally. And, bring it back to the photography piece. If we've got time to plan for photography and work out what we're going to do in that space,
that's valuable.
For the most important part of any campaign.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that's really valuable.
Yeah. Got a question for you in regards to what day of the week do you think's the best to put a property on the market? Do you have a day of the week, or is it pretty much a client comes to you and like, I want it on the market yesterday?
Yeah, good. It's a good question. Obviously, most of our open farm tours or open homes occur on a weekend. So we do like to, going off the back of research, we have changed this over the years. We used to launch properties on a Thursday. We now like to launch them at the earlier in the week, on a Monday or a Tuesday.
Okay.
And that's mainly around consumer behaviour. Tuesday afternoon.
Yep.
Great time to be launching property.
Yep. And that's because it then gives them time to look and research and go, this is what I'm doing this weekend as a result.
Totally. And I think it comes back to the point of what we're presenting to the market. We're not selling an exclusive product.
Yes.
There is competition out there. And that's why the photography is so important, so that when you've got a buyer, because real estate agents like having open homes at 10, 11 and 12 on a Saturday. So that means that in our market, there might be 15 homes for sale and they're all open at the same time. And it's like, right, well, this is not making sense.
Yeah.
So,
not to mention you've got 100 kilometres between each one
correct.
To go look at them.
So and then you've got rural property where you're mainly doing the inspections on a Thursday, we find. And again, there's competition on a Thursday as to where you go. So when we are sitting down with a client and we're talking about the best way of presenting their property, ultimately, the question that we're trying to answer, or the win that we're trying to get, is if you were sitting there as a buyer and you had to choose one of two properties to go and inspect on the weekend at the same time, which one's going to win the battle? Yeah,
really good point.
And that's why the photography and the videography is so important.
Yeah, awesome. Well, George, thank you very much for coming on our podcast. There's some really cool little insights there, and we'll definitely see you on the next job for sure.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Cheers.
Pat.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.